Good evening and welcome to our October meeting. And we have a great format tonight. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our past district governor and membership chair, Will. And Will can introduce our wonderful speaker tonight. And thank you so much. It's great to have a speaker on our e-club meeting. And hopefully this is starting a series every month. So let's start it over. Thank you again, Will, Alicia, for getting our speaker tonight. Looks like a great format, so I'll turn it over to you so our speaker can have as much time as he needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I'm really pleased to have Dick Schultz join us by phone tonight. Dick is a long-term Rotarian, good friend, a member of the St. Pete Sunrise Club, and interestingly enough, past Commodore of the International Yachting Fellowship of Rotarians, the first Rotary Fellowship that I ever joined. So Dick is an old sailor. He's a polio survivor and a post-polio syndrome research patient. So Dick's going to kind of bring us up to date on where polio stands in the world, Rotary's work in it, and especially some personal notes on his journey, his continuing journey on that subject. So, Dick, let me turn things over to you, and we'll all listen.
Well, thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be here. I joined Rotary in 1979, and so I've been around this game a bit. But first off, I must say thank you for having me. And secondly, I just got through watching the 30-minute presentation on the internet for World Polio Day, and I recommend that to everybody because they really cover all the bases. There is so much information out there on the Rotary endpolio.org sites that certainly can put me to sleep, but at any rate, some good stuff. So a little bit of a background on who I am and my Provence and what maybe gives some meaning to what I'm about to say. But I was born in Jacksonville, Florida in 1939 when Hitler was running over Poland. And 22 months later, I was getting very tired and playing in the waters of Lake Keystone in northeast Florida near what is the Army Camp Landing Base. And at that point, I came home and I got sick, and they thought I had a virus. And so for about a week, I was, at home sick and throwing up and doing all kinds of ugly things and screaming a lot. And so they took me to the pediatrician, and he said, oh, well, we maybe need to take a spinal tap. So at about the 10th day of this thing, they finally got the spinal tap done and said, oh, expletive deleted, that's polio. And they put me in St. Vincent's Hospital there in Jacksonville in quarantine. They quarantined my parents' house and the houses all around us, and that made everybody unhappy because everybody was trying to go to work but couldn't. So at any rate, I was in St. Vincent's for about 2 more or 3 weeks and finally got out of there and went on about my way. I discovered just last week, reading the November issue of the Rotarian magazine, that Ann Wade over in Tampa, who's the president of the New Tampa Rotary Club, she and I share something because we were both in Hope Haven Hospital in Jacksonville for years, learning how to walk again. So it gets to be kind of a small world in some respects, but she has a real nice article there, Vitae, in the Rotarian magazine, and I recommend it to you. So as I say, I was at Hope Haven Hospital and took about to the point that I got to be 4 years old before I could walk again, and I had a leg brace, and it went up to my thigh, and then later on it got shorter to where it was just below the knee. But one of the things that polio does to you as a kid, it makes you a type A personality. You don't take much of anything from anybody, and you just have to get it on and get it done. So that was the way it was. I went through grammar school and high school and all of that with a limp. My left leg was atrophied, and I had what they called a drop foot. But long about 1953, a surgeon up at Emory Hospital University in Atlanta came up with a procedure to do what he called a tri-block, so that he went in and and blocked up all the bones in my left ankle so it wouldn't drop. And so I didn't have to wear a brace anymore. So that was a good thing. And so I haven't worn a brace the rest of my life since I was about, 12, 14 years old. So fast forwarding a little bit, I became a went through Jacksonville University and University of Florida, and I got into sports car racing and even got my SCCA driver's license. And because my ankle had been tri-blocked, I was able to water ski and do a lot of things. So most of my life, I've been doing everything that everybody else does, just with a little bit of a limp, and not even realizing I had a problem. Finally wound up moving to St. Petersburg from Jacksonville in the mortgage business, and along about 1979, I joined what was then Gateway Rotary Club, and that was 40 years ago, and we then later on became Sunrise, St. Pete Sunrise Rotary Club. Along about 1985, 84, 85, Hugh Brown of Clearwater was our international Rotary president, and he, along with some others, were looking for a major project for Rotary International, and polio was running rampant in the Philippines, and so they thought, well, let's see what we can do about just eradicating polio in the Philippines. And lo and behold, a couple of years, they got that done. They literally eradicated polio in the Philippines. And they kind of looked around at each other and they said, well, if we can do it in the Philippines, maybe we can do it around the world. So they got in touch with WHO and UNICEF and with the CDC in Atlanta and said, hey, let's do a partnership and see if we can't, using the 1.2 million Rotarians and 35,000 clubs around the world as our labor force, go out and just put this vaccine in all the kids and eradicate it. So as you all mostly know, that has happened. We went from 350,000 cases a year of polio throughout the world and some 50,000 in the United States, and which we had been at 50,000, but due to Salk and the rest of it, we were gotten it down to zero here before this started. So at any rate, worldwide we were at 350,000 along about 1986, 88, and today we are down to some 40. And only 3 or 4 of those are what we call wild polio cases. Polio has 3 different strains. There's a type 1, 2, and a 3. And through our eradication efforts, we've eliminated totally worldwide types 2 and 3, which leaves us with just what we call wild polio 1. And there's, as I say, there's only about 40 cases so far this year, and only in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and primarily on the border between those 2 countries, which are warring with each other. So we're down to the point to where within 6 months or so, we're going to be able to announce that we have totally eradicated polio in the continent of Africa. That has been done everywhere else, including India, which a lot of folks thought was just impossible. But through Rotary and WHO and some other folks, we got it done. Those Rotarians in India are not to be told they can't do something, because they surely fell to and got her done. So that's kind of where we sit today. We're in that position where we're down to the last cases. We still have laboratories around the world who test for polio. We have production facilities around the world that are producing the vaccine, because we're still vaccinating everywhere, because we don't want to let this genie get out of the bottle and mess things up. They think if it does get out, if polio does come back, we'll be looking at some 200,000 cases, and that's a cost to the world of some $5 billion a year. So there's both the medical side of this thing that we don't want, and there's also the horrible cost to the world of dealing with it. So backing up a little bit, during my career, I became a commercial real estate property manager and worked for banks and did property management of high-rise buildings and warehouses and apartment projects and all that kind of thing until about 1999 2009, when I started to come down with what I came to find out was post-polio syndrome. And that's a case where all those years from 1941 until 1998 or whatever it was, I had the what do you call it? The nerve endings in my body that were still good had been doing the work of two. And to put it sort of simply, they get tired of doing that extra work, and they start to say, hey, I'm done. I'm going on vacation. You can go take care of yourself. And so you come up with what is not polio again, but what becomes a worsening effect of the original polio case. So you get fatigued earlier. You can't walk as well. You don't lift as much. You know, you become cranky, whatever. And so you wind up maybe using a walker or whatever. And just recently, I've found myself back in a wheelchair a bunch of the time. But nonetheless, post-polio syndrome is what we're left with throughout the world. And there'll be some, I don't know, some 10 million cases of it in India. There are some 500,000 cases of it in the United States. Most people don't know that this situation exists. And so when it hits the doctors today who don't know much about polio because they haven't had to deal with it, they think it may be chronic fatigue syndrome when in fact it is post-polio syndrome because the two are somewhat similar in their effects. But nonetheless, there are a lot of folks out there and ratcheting down maybe some 30,000 in the state of Florida that either have post-polio syndrome or are going to get it because it's just one of those things. About 50 to 70% of people who had polio of one or two of the different kinds wind up having the same diminution of the nerve endings that they still have left. So at that point, maybe I could put this out for a question too before I rattle on here, and wonder if some folks have some interested questions of what I've just said.
Yeah, Dick, I've got one that you may have the answer to. Several years ago, I had a club president who told his club that they didn't need to give any more money to Rotary's polio efforts because we were down to only 2 countries left, and that was such a little amount of work that we really didn't need to give much money. So my understanding is that we are still continuing to have to immunize every child in the world as much we can. Is that correct?
Well, that is correct. It's a matter, simply put, that if you get one child who is having the having the polio virus active and he's actively sick, gets on an airplane and flies to one of these other countries that's only 70% covered, you can wind up having an epidemic. For that very reason, we need to keep vaccinating kids, particularly in Florida. There are places in the United States, principally California, where the vaccination rate's like only 50 to 70%. So you get one kid flying from Pakistan into Los Angeles airport, and you got a problem. So for that reason, we have all these laboratories, and every time someone thinks they have a polio case, they take the feces and they put it in a bottle, whatever, and they send it to the lab where it gets tested, and they find out whether it is or isn't. They find out what type of polio it is, and so they know where to go with what kind of vaccine. I might mention too that there's another form of polio that occurs because when we're doing the wild polio vaccination, we're using a live polio strain, and in some cases, maybe 1/100 of 1% of the cases, that then generates transforms itself into a type of polio, but not a wild virus polio. So we continue to have those cases, but they will die out because they don't survive once the child is sick and gets over it. But yes, there's a very desperate need to continue to vaccinate worldwide throughout India and Africa and everywhere else, because it will come back quickly if you have a low rate of vaccination. So I wish that president well, but I would tell him don't go to Pakistan. So, any other thoughts?
Yeah, Dick, I'll share one other thing. I remember when we had several Ebola outbreaks in the world, and the question was, well, is Rotary going to step in and work on Ebola? And we found out the answer was not directly. We were set up to directly deal with the Ebola epidemic. However, our polio eradication network and infrastructure was so robust in all these countries, particularly Africa, that researchers and health professionals were able to use the Rotary polio network and infrastructure to help quickly contain Ebola. So that was an interesting side benefit.
Polio Plus.
Well, truly, the management plan, if you will, that has been developed for all the different countries with a different, because most of the areas are unique, and so you need a little bit different type of management plan to go after it. But truly, all these Rotarians that have done this around the world, all that organization that sits in Illinois, and all the in WHO and in CDC and UNICEF, as well as the Gates Foundation, which I'll come back to. But the point of it is that your point is well taken. When we get polio eradicated to the point that the world is certified totally free, we more than likely will take on something like Ebola or malaria or one of the other diseases that ravage the world. And that leads me back to Bill and Melinda Gates, God bless them. They were involved in Africa with malaria and importing nets for the people to put over their beds and things of that nature to try to eliminate or get malaria under control. And as Melinda and Bill were in Africa, they kept seeing more and more polio cases, and they decided, and long story short, to take on helping to eradicate polio. Ergo, they have for I don't know how many years now been providing $2 to the effort for every dollar Rotary raises. And they're into it now for some, I'm not sure what the number is, it's something like $500 million that they've already invested. But they together with the Gates Foundation and their funds and connections that they had, Microsoft, have worth help what we're doing. So I would say that malaria has been one of the things that Melinda Gates has been much involved with, and well, we might take that on when we get this one cured. I would say that we have a need for some, was it $2.5 billion over the next 4 years to finish this job, and that's to be raised not only by Rotary but also by countries and other foundations and whatever around the world. But nonetheless, so much of that money, some 80% of it, doesn't go to vaccinations. It goes to maintaining all of these laboratories to keep a check on things and keep these people employed who are watching to make sure we don't get a resurgence, we don't get any more epidemics in places we thought we had cured. So, but that about, I would say, and ending here on my part, is that the November issue of the Rotarian magazine has a number of articles in it about polio and how it's affected various people and where we're going from here. To say it so much better than I. So, any other questions?
Hello, this is John Gallant. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I wanted to find out, have you ever done any work in South America with Gustavo Gross, a friend of Herb Brown's?
No, I haven't. Sandy Lilo has with her cleft palate work and some other things. She's in the Rotary Club out there in Seminole.
Seminole Lake.
Uh,
No, I've
pardon me?
worked in South America with Sandra, so
Oh, okay.
that's
So
the
you're
reason
ahead of the
I
game.
asked.
Yeah. No, I have not personally. I have been involved with the guys and gals up at the University of Florida who are second years in the physical therapy school at the medical school at the University of Florida. We have post-polio support clubs around the world, but we have some 12 here in Florida, and the one in Ocala has been very, very active, and every year they take about 15 or 18 of us from around Florida up there to Gainesville and let the second year physical therapists work on us, as it were, to train to recognize what polio is and how to deal with the various joint problems and muscle problems and how we get around in wheelchairs or crutches or whatever. So that's kind of been my involvement in the research side, other than being involved with surveys and things of that nature.
The reason I had asked, there's a symposium and there's a project fair in South America in Lima that's being hosted by Gustavo. He was one of the last, he had one of the last people in Peru and South America that had polio, Luis Furman. I got to meet them, and they're doing a project fair in February where polio is going to be one of the projects that they try to bring, to everybody's attention again to make sure that this isn't a reoccurrence there in South America. And I think it's going to be a very important project fair. It happens, I think it's the 23rd of February. They have quite a few presenters, and one of the subjects is going to be, continuing the eradication of polio.
Continuation of vaccination of every child.
Yes.
And we have that problem of those folks in Pakistan and Afghanistan of not wanting their children vaccinated because, for simple, silly reasons to my mind, of the fact that they weren't vaccinated and their parents weren't vaccinated, so why should I vaccinate? There's a host of different reasons why mothers don't do it, and so a lot of the teams that go out to put the drops in the kids' mouths spend a lot of time teaching the mothers about why they should do it and why they need to tell others to do it, and getting rid of the
Perception?
the perceptions. Yes, exactly.
Well, unfortunately, I got to see this firsthand when I lived in Peru in the 50s. And my uncle, who came from the Azores, was a victim of polio when he came. I saw what you're talking about, the secondary reactions from having the disease. But I saw my friends, I saw their mothers, I saw their fathers die from it. At the time, there were only a few iron lungs in Lima. So I understand the issues with it. I wish we would be involved in more countries than those that are systemically challenged by the disease. Because if we're not, and we don't take action in those countries as well, we're going to have a resurgence.
So true. Another aside that just occurs to me, I don't know how many of you folks know it, but our current district governor is a polio. He and his 4 brothers all came down with it. One of them died, and the other 2 had a worse case of it. and like me, he had a real light case, so that today you wouldn't even know that our district governor is a polio, but he's starting to have a little bit of a feeling about the post-polio syndrome as well. If you ever, well, the other effect is, as I said earlier, is that like in India, where there are millions of folks on the streets who are chastised for being disabled, those folks will come down with post-polio syndrome as well. So India's got a severe problem yet to go for the next, whatever, 40, 50 years.
It is interesting how many people involved in Rotary have been affected by polio. One of our longtime members, his wife was affected, was in an iron lung, and my previous club, the president of the club, had been a polio victim, and he talked about the post-polio syndrome.
Oh, which club was that?
That was a Viera club on the east coast of Florida.
Well, one of the problems we've had with the polio support groups is getting people to admit that they had polio. There's a lot of folks who really feel it was something to be maybe ashamed of or something, but they just don't want to admit it. And I've had a tough time in my 40 years with Rotary trying to get Rotarians to identify that they are a polio, and maybe we could, help each other somehow. So I wish we could develop some kind of a directory or whatever of who had it and who can speak to the problem, because those folks can speak to it better than I, that's for sure. Others?
Are there other questions for Dick while we've got him online here?
Yeah, I have a question. This is President. Hi, and thanks again for being on with us tonight. This is really very informative. Two things. First of all, we've been doing this for decades, certainly with Rotary International. The thing is, it's really discouraging that always on the national news, we see so little. I think I have to look back ways to see one of the last campaigns that we did in India, I think was featured on NBC Evening News. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of coverage on this for people to see around the world what we're doing. We know in Rotary what we're doing. A lot of people do hear what we're doing. It just seems like it comes and goes as far as with the, public relations, the marketing of what we're doing. And the second point is, as we try to get younger members, millennials, and soon to be Generation Y and Z, it seems like they don't know much about polio. I mean, maybe a grandparent or a great-grandparent. It's something that they're really not even accustomed, or it's in their lingo. So how do we, as we get newer members and we talk about this is something sort of one of our brand niche things that we have done as Rotarians forever. I mean, I've been in the clubs on and off for almost 40 years, and I remember this from day one. So what do we do to really get the word out more nationally? And number two, as we attract younger members, we try to attract younger Rotarians around the world. What do we do to really make sure that they, buy into what we're doing? And it's important to them as it is to us when they really, from a lot of them, it doesn't affect them, like the opioid crisis or things that they see and do and has really affected them for, as teenagers and young people for years.
Pardon, that's my ship's clock going off. Will understand. But
I've got-
you know, one of the things that I've been so happy to see over the years is that various major personages in entertainment, singers, players, violinists, you know, actors, and TV shows that are popular today have gotten involved in the we're this close ad campaigns, and a number of those people are still involved. Fact is, they're on the 30-minute program that you can see on the website or on Facebook tonight. So, you know, your point's well taken. If we can find the folks that the millennials and others look up to or admire to take on this as a project, then that's one way we can keep it up front. Other than that, you know, walking through a ward with 50 iron lungs running, as I did as a child, you know, it puts a burning memory in your head that you just don't forget. So unless we take some of these folks to India and Africa and some of these other places where the residual effects are visible on all the streets, I don't know how else we do it. But your point's well taken.
If I could add one thing, Rotary International encouraged all clubs several years ago to start what was called a Purple Pinky Day education program. And I remember a number of clubs in St. Pete got together. I participated in downtown at one of the events, and we set up a booth with all sorts of educational material, a lot that had been provided by Rotary and purchased by the district. You know, really cool comic book about the history of polio, Jonas Salk, Sabine, and we had that available for parents and kids. And I was surprised. A lot of parents said, well, I thought polio was eradicated in the world. I thought it was all gone. And so it was an education process. And we were at a public event there. We had a good booth, lots of Rotary symbols and banners, and then we were educating the public as they came by and encouraging them to make a donation to Rotary's Polio Plus Foundation. All that was under the encouragement of RI nationwide. So that's one thing that we've done, public education campaigns.
Yeah, we have Bruce Waters to thank for that. It was in front of his jewelry store on Beach Drive in downtown St. Pete that we used his tents and your materials, and you're so right. The people walking up and down Beach Drive in October were just that. They were totally surprised and very generous too, I might add. We picked up some big bucks on those events, but that's where that red shirt that says "In Polio Now" first came out. And we also had those caps. Those caps are in short supply, by the way. But that if we could do that kind of thing again in Clearwater Beach and where there are a lot of tourists and folks running around, I think that's one way you get the message out. 60 Minutes did a couple programs over the last 20 years, and so has another channel, I forget which, but I personally have tried to get the St. Pete Times, now called the Tampa Bay Times, to do articles, and it just doesn't sell for them because it doesn't generate any true interest in their heads. But if anybody has a way of talking to Paul Tash or some of these other folks, I'd be more than happy to join in the game.
Yeah. Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, is a polio survivor as well.
Pardon me?
Isn't Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, a polio survivor?
I don't know the name.
Yeah.
But here again, if we could get the clubs to all, and maybe a past district governor might take this on as a challenge, to get the various clubs to take a census of how many polios they know or whatever. Maybe we as a district could create a greater interest, because we certainly have the people coming here spend the winter. And
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion for the current and the next district governors.
yeah, there you are.
Dick, when we're so close, when we finally get this eradicated, what does it take to have a flare up? Is this, I mean, will it, when it's eradicated, or, I mean, I'm certainly, you can get new polio cases, can't you?
The thing of it is, the polio virus in the wild, in the sewer, whatever, lasts 7 days or less, and then it dies. It's dead. It's non-viable. So to the extent that you have no live cases in a person or in the sewer, then you have totally eradicated the virus. That's the one beautiful thing about polio virus, is that when it's dead, it's dead. And so that's where we're going.
Yeah,
So
and it's only host.
that's why we. Pardon me?
Its only host is human, so it's only human to human. There's not another vector for it.
Correct. And that's why we have these laboratories that are going around checking the rivers and the sewer systems and whatever. A year or two back, they found in the major Tel Aviv in Israel, they found a live polio virus in the sewer system, and they immediately eradicated and what do you call it? Put all the bad chemicals in the sewer system to kill it. So they did not wind up with any cases in Tel Aviv. But that's one of the major costs that we now have and will continue to have, to make sure we have the laboratories that can identify what and where and how to take care of it.
We hope that what we'll be able to accomplish with polio is the same thing that we accomplished with smallpox. Smallpox is totally eradicated, except for a few research vials at the CDC here and in Russia.
Yeah, in Atlanta. Yeah, so true. But here again is something we talked about earlier, that the next thing we go after may be something similar to polio, like Ebola, which if it's one of those types of viruses that when you've killed the last one, you have killed all of them. That's something that is worthwhile for us to take after. But and so I don't think that Rotary is going to get out of this game in our lifetimes or any time in the next 50 years. So, but I appreciate your interest.
Yeah, so we're looking at a possible, even if it's eradicated, there are going to be labs, resources that are going to stay viable for X amount of time until we know for sure.
I'm not sure your question.
Well, we've got the polio virus eradicated. Every place has been certified polio free. Will labs not hold on to vials, like you just said, of smallpox of the polio virus for X amount of years until everybody is comfortable that we have eradicated it?
Yeah, your point. Yeah, you're dead on. The labs need to stay in place until at least 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure time period after everywhere is certified as free, and then those same laboratories can be used for other eradication processes, where it's Ebola or whatever. Hopefully, we find some way to prevent malaria, and that might. And so all those laboratories, those networks, those interactions, all those people who have person-to-person contact and trust with each other, that's the network that we don't want to lose. Because it certainly is viable for something else, and there may be something else that comes along that we don't even see today. I mean,
Dick, has anybody put together, I'm sure there is, over the years and years we've been fighting this with Rotary, do we know what the monetary number is? I mean, I'm billions.
It's something like 500 billion.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah, but that includes, computation of labor that was given. That includes monies that the government's put out, the manpower that government's provided, beyond and including Rotary donations, Rotarians volunteering their executive time, and the cost of laboratories and everything else. But yes, it's a very big number, and that's why we're on the downslope here. But we need to keep it rolling, and we need to keep those donations coming. And it's so easy to donate. You just go to endpolio.org and give them your MasterCard number, and you're in. It's real easy.
That's great.
Excuse me for interrupting, but there is a website that you can go to that tells you dollars and cents on everything that was donated, all the polio cases that are every week it comes up with how many wild polio, regular polio, and the different areas. And I will send you the link to that. It's a very simple site. And you know
use it every couple of weeks. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so
they
you
are
know
the
what
folks.
that is.
They are the folks that took over the administration of the 5 now partners involved in the eradication that's been going on since 1989, I think it was. And,
right.
Yeah, it's a great website. Yeah, they keep things, they track things almost by the hour, and it's all right there. And I'm happy to share that with Will and whoever else.
Yeah, I just checked, I did a little research because I also enjoy classical music and I'm very familiar with Itzhak Perlman. He contracted polio at the age of 4. He plays with sitting down. He has crutches, braces, and he has given a lot of benefit concerts. In 2009, he gave a benefit concert in New York at I believe it was at Avery Fisher Hall, for the benefit of Rotary International.
Mm-hmm.
So he's raised a lot of money, and is a real testament to the effort to eradicate polio.
He was here in St. Petersburg a couple of years ago at the Mahaffey,
Mm-hmm.
and spoke of it as well. Yeah, true heroes.
Dick, over the years and years ago, did FDR's family work with Rotary on polio in any way? You would think that they did, or
well,
something like that?
Yeah, FDR and his administrative assistant, whose name escapes me, started March of Dimes.
Oh, okay.
And so that's, as I was a child, FDR was sort of my hero, whatever. But the Great Deception, no one knew he couldn't walk. But nonetheless, no, FDR was very much involved with Warm Springs, Georgia, where he passed away. Fact is, FDR risked his entire wealth to start the March of Dimes in Warm Springs and save Warm Springs, Georgia. So,
wow.
Yeah. I think, Andy,
yeah.
a month or so ago, I did a program for Ashley, and one of the Rotary programs. I called it a Foundation Moment, and I talked about the polio that FDR had contracted. And I've been reading. I've read a book by Doris Kearns Goodwin about leadership, and one of the people that she talks about is Roosevelt. And her description of how he came down with polio was absolutely startling, and I would commend it to anyone. I mean, here's a man who was up and coming, had everything going for him, and suddenly one day comes back from a trip with his family, and the next day he's unable to walk. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And then
He couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe
He would not accept it at first. I mean,
and yeah, I was in real denial, and was ultimately diagnosed, and he did a lot at Warm Springs, which is still going. You can visit Warm Springs, Georgia.
yeah, the surgeon that fixed my ankle with the drop foot was the lead surgeon at Warm Springs, so that I went for follow-ups after that surgery. We went to Warm Springs, which is a heck of a hard place to get to. It is to hell and gone in the middle of nowhere.
The reason I know about it, my son taught at West Georgia University in Carrollton, Georgia, and Warm Springs, you can reach it on the way down to Fole.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And at the Rotary Convention we had in Atlanta, there were several Rotarians there from Warm Springs area, from that Rotary Club, and they were raising money to rebuild the swimming pool, which has been in disrepair and issues. So they had started a foundation, and so I don't know where they got with it or where it is today, but they were there in the Hall of Friendship or whatever we call it. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, and of course, The Great Deception, which is the name of a book somebody wrote about FDR, and how he and the Secret Service and his close friends always made sure, and the press and the media, they were all in on it, that they never ever took a picture or a movie of him where he was being put in place to where he would stand up with his braces locked. And he only was able to do that for a while. So the fact that he lasted as long as he did at Yalta with Churchill and Stalin is amazing to me.
That wouldn't work today with all the media, but I'm so glad he could pull it off, almost 80 years ago. Today, I mean, a reporter would have found that out the next day, but I'm just so glad because, I mean, it's incredible. I think things might have been different, certainly from the idea of his leadership and people, being weak and whatever, which he never was. But I'm just so glad they were able to pull it off all those years then, because who knows what would have happened.
It exists today, too, because, as you may know, March of Dimes is still very much involved with children. Yeah. And very active. And so, and the mothers go around the neighborhoods and collect money and whatever every year. So he left a legacy that's important.
And that's great.
Dick, we really appreciate you taking time out from your busy schedule to talk with us. Very enlightening. Thank you, my friend.
And Dick, we have this up on our website. It's recorded, so we hope that all of our Rotarians who are not on tonight will be able to listen to you. I think it's fascinating and inspiring, and I think it's incredible. So I hope everybody will take a listen and be able to listen more about what you said tonight. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'll send to Will a bunch of these websites, and so if he wants to post it on your e-Rotary site, they'll be available for everybody.
Great. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Dick.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thanks, Dick. Have a great evening.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Do we have any other business? I mean, that was it's hard to go after that act. Dick was incredible, but Will, while we have you, first of all, I haven't talked to you guys for a while. Congratulations with membership. I mean, this club is rocking and rolling so much. I can't keep up with it. What you guys are doing is just superb. Speaking as your president, I just want to congratulate you. And
well, thank you very much, Andy. And perhaps you noticed that one of our new prospective members, Extra, is on this video teleconference with us.
Yeah, and welcome. Thank you for being here. That's wonderful. And I'm hoping you're liking and what you're seeing and hearing tonight. And maybe we can get some of your reflections. What do you think?
I have something I must take responsibility for. I was talking with Lisa over in the Tampa Rotary District, and I gave her information about this e-club tonight, and she has put it on the Rotary, what is it, 6890 website, so that if you get comments or input from a whole bunch of Rotarians from the Tampa area, I'm guilty.
Oh, great,
Oh,
great. Thanks,
thank you.
Dick.
Thank you.
Good. We need all the promotion we can get.
Yes,
Dick, that kind of guiltiness we like. Thank you so much. That's guilty
Oh,
with
kind of happen chance.
That's
Well,
wonderful. Thank you.
Oh,
But
you're welcome.
yeah, well, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this is just rocking and rolling, and every day I see a new member coming on or proposed member. I think this is just wonderful. And who knew that this wonderful little e-club would just be exploding and going, you know, up. So this is great. It's wonderful to see, and it's great. And it's going to be great for Alicia next year, just to have all this. I don't know. So keeping up with all that, it's going to be great. And also, Will, thank you so much for following up with everybody and sending out those letters. It's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, and we have the district governor's Zoom meeting coming up next week. Is that right?
No, November 7th, 7 o'clock.
7. Okay, cool.
So we'll keep on reminding people. Stacy's going to send out notices. We'll make calls. We really want to have a really good showing. Tonight was a nice showing, but I think we really want to have a good showing. I know Will, when you were governor, I'm sure you loved having a great showing, and everybody did their best to get all their members showing up to a meeting.
David?
Instead of calls, how about just send out the invitation so that it goes into people's smartphone schedule?
And I think, didn't Stacy do that? Was that done?
I don't use anything external coming into a schedule. I don't use a schedule, so.
I'll ask Stacy and see what, if she knows how to.
Yeah, I just sent out an email because so many people don't use the calendar. So I just sent the email and relied on people to put it on their own calendar.
Okay. If they're not doing it, you know, we'll have to see whatever, if there's any other way we can reach people or remind them, that would be great. I don't know. A lot of people, when I try to reach students, I message them now, and that's the way they respond. You know, you message them through with their telephone number, and that seems to work with students. But I don't know if that would be any more helpful here. I don't know. But we'll just keep on reminding. We have a couple of weeks. What is that? That's really 2 weeks from now, right?
2 weeks, yeah.
So we'll just keep on. Hopefully we get a lot of people on, because I know we want to hear certainly what the governor's going to talk about and his plans for this year and what's happening. So that would be really good. And I don't think we're kind of at the end of his schedule, only because I think you know, when he can get us on and so forth. So we'll just do that. And I think our HE Karen will be on the call too. And I think Robin has his hand up.
Yeah, a question on the presidential citation for this year. What's the score on that, or what's the status? Are we doing anything about it for 1920?
Yeah, well, we're I know you guys are working sort of from that checklist and continuing on. Now that we've done it and hopefully have it, I think from what you said, Will and Alicia, that it's going to be a little bit easier in many regards. I suppose a few changes, but I think we'll have everything hopefully for the next calendar year, right?
Well, we're working on it. There have been some substantial changes, so we'll we'll continue to review it, and we will be getting out all of the points that need immediate attention.
Yeah, Andy, you and I need to talk about that offline, okay?
Yeah, let's talk about it. And what I'd like to do, Will, this year, we've talked about it, is really try to get people involved so they can really own this. Hopefully we got it for this year. I mean, every year, because, you know, maybe it gets a little harder. It's a challenge with new things that RI is including. So I think we need to have new people come in and work on it and own it and be a part of it rather than the 80-20 rule. I think so. Let's see how we can get those people involved and, you know, check the boxes as we need so we can go on and have it for the second year and also for Alicia's year and moving forward. I like to see this obviously every year moving forward. And again, it probably won't always be easy, but I think it will be doable.
Yeah, of course, but it's going to take the work of a lot of people. Among the requirements for this year's citation is to bring in one new female member under the age of 40.
Okay.
We have 2 standing committees, 1 membership, 1 foundation, with not less than 5 people each. And we don't have any of those 3 things done yet.
Okay. All right. So maybe we can talk if Robin wants to get involved. David, any of us, any of you, if you have some input, you want to get it, we can do a Zoom meeting on that. Set it up. And
yeah, I think the sooner we set up some kind of a meeting and assign some responsibilities or committees, the better.
Good. So, Will, do you know everything about what we need, or are you kind of still going on?
I don't. Well, I've got the list,
Okay.
Andy. I've got the list. It's. I couldn't get a copy that wasn't so fine as almost unreadable without a magnifying glass. So I'm gonna have to transcribe those things, the minimums for the citation, and put that out to the board in an email, and then you know, we can set up a video teleconference for us to discuss it.
Okay, that's good.
We should try to do that in the month of November.
Okay.
We don't want to be going into next year. Like, this is the end of October, and we have another meeting coming up soon. But soon in November, we should have a meeting. Andy, you know, you need to call a meeting sometime in the middle of November so that we can address this and assign the responsibilities.
Okay. Let's work on that and get that.
I'd like to interrupt for a minute. I'm going to be leaving the meeting. I sent everybody a link where you can look at the polio eradication for today and the week. So you should have it. Thank you very much. It was very informative, and sorry to leave you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, John.
Thank you, John.
And wonderful. I'm doing it too as we speak. So.
Okay, Dick.
Yep.
Thank you, Dick.
Thanks.
And certainly December or January, let's start. I know Alicia and Stacy working on that calendar with the same sort of time frame meeting every month. Let's do that. I think we kind of have that set up. That way everybody's going to know. So if you want to start December or start fresh in January, let's do that for the year. We'll have it all locked in, and we'll have those dates. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Andy, we also are required by the bylaws to have an annual meeting in December. So
yes.
We do that by video teleconference, and I'm sure you've got some ideas on that already.
Okay. All right. So maybe when
you'll have the S4TL lady on. Did you get that video, Will?
Yes, Robin. I didn't know I was responsible for getting her on the program. You want to do that for December and make that like a speaker for the annual meeting, or what?
Whatever. We just don't want to forget it and leave it too long.
No, I'll talk to her.
Okay.
At least you have that for us.
Okay, great, awesome. Stacey, did you Alicia, did you go to any of your first meetings? How did those go? Did they start yet?
That's November 2nd.
Okay.
And I was I was like one of the first to sign up, so we're going, and Will's going to go for a membership, and I've got somebody in my mind to talk to about foundation. So all three of people are welcome to the Pets one.
Okay, awesome.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything? We're at the 8 o'clock hour. Any other business? New business? Any announcements?
Okay. I'll stop.
Yeah. So I'll get in touch. Will, Alicia, Robin will all get in touch and via email or call and set some of these meetings up so we can get everything done.
Right.
Okay.
Good to see everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
It's a great meeting. Thank you so much. A great speaker. And let's do the 4-way test. Let's start with Robin in Ireland.